The first thing that I did, once I started noticing the numbers really exploding, I wrote a letter that I was going to send to the legislators in Austin saying, this is a crisis. This was back in March of 21. Several other papers picked it up. It went online. I drafted a local state of disaster for the border crisis in Kinney County. Total, I think 60 counties or so also passed that same local state of disaster. And that's what really kicked off Operation Lone Star on getting border security as a focus point for the Texas legislature and the governor's office.
Ready to roll?
Yep.
All right.
Real Texan.
Why should this matter to real Texans?
Today we're chatting with Brent Smith. He's a third-generation rancher, a son of the Republic of Texas, and for the past few years, he's been serving as the Kinney County attorney. Thank you for joining us today, Brent.
Thank you.
To get started, would you mind telling me what was it like growing up in a border county? Like before all the chaos of the past few years, what was it like when you were a kid?
Growing up on the border, just kind of like everywhere else, you knew it was there. But as a ranching family, we dealt with some illegals coming across the border, but most of them, returned, or they were coming over for work. But that seemed to change, about when Obama was elected. The type of crossings were different. The type of people, the numbers, we started seeing an uptick back then. And now, we used to go to Mexico for shopping, other things like that growing up. But that stopped, several years ago. You couldn't pay me enough to go over to the border now with the cartels and everything else. It's almost a different country over there now. Unfortunately, with Texas sharing that much of a border, we now feel the brunt of it and the security challenges that we all have. So it's not like it was growing up. Growing up on the ranch, the main rule my mom had was make sure you're still in shouting distance. If she comes out and she shouts at me, I'm somewhere I can hear it and I come home. But now that's not the case anymore. If you have children, you don't let them out of your sight. They need to stay around the house. Even if their backyard is 1,000 acres, back in the day, we could roam around and have fun and explore caves. But now it's not like that. You have to take in consideration all the dangers and everything that's posed like that.
What was your favorite thing to do on the ranch when you were a kid?
Still the same, probably. Just go exploring. I'd go into a lot of caves, probably. I was the smallest one. My brother, I have an older brother. And so he and I would, play G.I. Joes, play guns or whatever you call it, explore and just, run around. And, we got up to all kinds of trouble, but you're on the ranch. And so it's kind of limited on what you can do. But as soon as we were old enough to work, that's where the fun stopped. My dad, basically was an indentured servitude kind of deal. We worked every day. And I remember in college, kids would go on vacation on cruises. And I didn't look forward to spring break because I went home to work. And so going to school was actually a break that I enjoyed from the ranch. But he taught us how to work hard and the values that we have. So I'm greatly benefited from it. I'm blessed to have that.
You've certainly carried it on kind of throughout the rest of your life. I was looking at your resume and I could not believe that you spent an additional 9 years in school after high school.
Well, you make it sound like I failed or something, but yeah.
You're very well educated. So take me through that. You went to San Angelo State and then
I played football at San Angelo State for 4 years. And, law school at some point was something I wanted to do. But my GPA after playing college football was not great. So I went to graduate school and I got a master's in policy analysis and public administration. And then right after that, I jumped into law school for another 3 years. So it was, I was in school for a long time, but I have a master's and a law degree. And so it paid off, I think.
Absolutely.
It taught you how to read, I'll tell you that. If you didn't know how to read before, I do now.
That's definitely a benefit.
Yeah.
What drove you into law? Did you always know you wanted to be an attorney?
I think to some degree, yeah. I noticed I've had experiences with ranchers and neighbors, like having legal issues happen, and them having to go hire a lawyer to protect their own rights, whether it's, the federal government or anything else. To me, I didn't think you should have to hire a lawyer so you just protect the rights you already have. And I remember my family having to hire a lawyer at one point to do that. And I didn't want to have to hire a lawyer if I wanted to protect my own rights. And so that's kind of what drove me to look into law school. And it's such a versatile degree. You can do so many things with it, different types of law, different types of jobs. Some of it's not even legal. It's just a degree that you can do a whole lot with. And so that's kind of what pushed me toward law school whenever I was in undergrad.
So you went from law school then and you did oil and gas, correct?
Correct. I did oil and gas for a few years out in Midland. And then I did a lot of remote work where I lived on the ranch, but I did remote work for oil companies doing title opinions, division orders, things of that nature. And I would drive to Midland back and forth occasionally to meet the clients. But I enjoyed it. A lot of flow charts. I was a big flow chart person. A lot of flow charts. And then a lot of people started asking me to run for county attorney. And I didn't have any desire to jump into politics, really. I had my own political beliefs, but I was never considering myself political at all. But finally, the pastor at the church cornered me one day. He was like, "You need to run for county attorney." And at that point, just to get people to quit bothering me, I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And so I did. And being a hometown kid, everyone knew me, so I got elected. And then the work began. So I got elected when Biden was elected. So the border crisis opened up as soon as I was elected, and that's kind of where everything changed.
Absolutely. 2021 was a turning point.
Right.
In a lot of ways. I've heard some stories, and I want you to tell everybody what happened to your office budget after you got elected.
Well, the office budget, for office supplies anyway, once Operation Lone Star began, the grants weren't in place at the very, very beginning. We just started, the amount of arrests were astronomical. And so, I told DPS and our sheriff, I said, if they're criminally trespassing, arrest them. We'll take them to court. And so we did. And back then we had a paper system, hard copy system. And I spent my entire year's office budget on just one purchase of folders for keeping the case files together. And I was like, this is going to be a problem. And soon thereafter, Operation Lone Star started. And so we had more money for not just office folders, but staff, additional prosecutors to use, resources to actually have the criminal justice system function in a way it should with that many numbers. Because we went, looking before I was elected, there was probably 8 cases a month that we would have for arrests. And then once Operation Lone Star began and the border crisis happened, 150 a month would be a normal. And so we probably totaled about 4,000 to 6,000 cases of just criminal trespass, people that weren't from the county. And Kinney County has about 2,600 people. We prosecuted a lot more people that even live in the county. Mm-hmm. So that's the scope of Operation Lone Star was drastic. And but the arrests just kept happening. They kept coming. It's an open border. So, I didn't see a choice in the matter. Like, I'm here and I'm the prosecutor. The citizens of Kinney County are counting on me to prosecute people who get arrested. I'm not dismissing a single case unless it's warranted. So we started prosecuting every single one. And that's where it kind of began.
Did you imagine when you were a kid and you were thinking about going to law because you wanted to defend your rights that you would end up drafting a declaration of invasion?
No, I did not. That thought hadn't crossed my mind, but it was needed, I think, when we did it, because many people, didn't realize what was happening on the ground. In fact, before that, the first thing that I did, once I started noticing the numbers really exploding, I wrote a letter that I was going to send to the legislators in Austin saying, this is a crisis. This was back in March of 21. And I drafted a letter, and the sheriff came by, and I was like, "Hey, let me show you this letter I drafted. See if you can get some input on it." And he really liked the letter. He said, "You need to publish that letter, not just send it to Austin." And so I was like, "Well, I got to tone down the language a little bit," because I was pretty upset, because Austin seemed like they weren't going to do anything. So I redrafted the letter some and posted it or published it in the paper. Several other papers picked it up. It went online. And the Goliad County Sheriff and the judge from Goliad saw it somehow on Facebook. And they drove down the next day to Kinney County, met with us, saying, we have to do something. What are we going to do? And the local state of disaster was the first step that we needed to do. So I drafted a local state of disaster for the border crisis in Kinney County. So did Goliad County. And then we sent that template to other counties that would be interested. And I think 60 counties or so also passed that same local state of disaster. And that's what really kicked off Operation Lone Star on getting border security as a focus point for the Texas legislature and the governor's office.
Absolutely. Did you ever feel like you were carrying on a family legacy there?
No, not to that degree. But my family has been in Texas a long time, but I do kind of feel like it's a responsibility for us that our ancestors spilled their blood on this land for Texas and its independence. The least we could do is protect their sacrifice and what they did. And so I saw that I didn't see it as a choice. I was like, this is what we have to do. And it's too precious not to protect and preserve.
Absolutely. In the past 4 years, I know things have changed this year, but the past 4 years have certainly driven that home, that Texas is home and should be protected.
Yeah. Our sovereignty and everything that they sacrificed, I stand in awe of it. They put their lives on the line. Many of them lost their lives. The hardships that they went through of settling this state and the ideals that they wanted, the least that we can do is preserve those sacrifices and stand guardian over that thing that they sacrificed.
So for the past 4 years, we've talked about a little bit how much things changed. Under Biden, you walked in on the same day, essentially, to some extent. What was it like? You'd grown up on this ranch. This is your home. So from the county attorney's perspective, you've shared a lot of that. But what was it like just as a citizen? Like, this is my home. These are my people. What did you feel?
The first feeling that came across was like, well, the federal government needs to stand up and do something. But pretty quick, I realized the federal government's not going to do anything. They're doing this on purpose. You look at the policies that have changed, and you look at really the non-enforcement of the law was really what it comes down to. So it was clear to me the federal government wasn't going to do anything. And so it would be left to your local leaders, the people you elect locally. And I've told so many people, like, your local elections matter. In fact, they probably matter more than your state or national elections for your everyday activities. And I was the local elected, so it was up to me to do something. And, the ranchers in Kinney County, which is, Kinney County is by far an agricultural community. A lot of ranchers, hunting leases, hunting ranches. I've known them my whole life. Our neighbors are friends. They're almost like extended family. I saw the devastation and destruction that occurred that is just mind-boggling. The school has gone, they would shut down every day because of smuggling attempts. They finally put military-type barricades around the school campus to keep smugglers from driving through campus. It was, people use a cliche war zone, but every day it was a war zone. You would hear helicopters flying everywhere. You knew there was a bailout somewhere. Law enforcement was reacting. It was just kind of, we were reacting to the crisis that was pushed upon us by the Biden administration. And there was only so much we could do. And we did everything we can. But it was surreal. The community was damaged drastically. It was really a nightmare to go through.
Did it drive a lot of people kind of away? Did people leave under the stress?
Some did, but I think the most thing that happened is people that lived on ranches with families, they moved their families off the ranches because they weren't secured. Late at night, law enforcement is 30, 45 minutes away. You don't want your family put in that kind of danger. So they would move off the ranches and move into town or somewhere else. And so a lot of people did relocate off the ranches just because of the danger it posed.
Absolutely. And so this year things have changed. How have you seen that in Kinney County?
The arrest numbers are much lower now. The border security, now that Border Patrol is actually a partner in what we're doing. DHS is doing a pretty good job on securing the border, because we have about 16 miles of border with Mexico, but we don't have a port of entry. And Kinney County was kind of known as the Godaway County because we have a port of entry in Del Rio and we have a port of entry in Eagle Pass. And that kind of, we're right in the middle. And so to get through the Border Patrol checkpoint, which is on Highway 90 that goes to San Antonio, there's back roads through Kinney County that you can utilize to do that. So we were kind of a funnel for all the gotaways that occurred through Eagle Pass and Del Rio. So the numbers that we saw on the gotaways, both on foot and by vehicle, were just topping records that we've never seen before. And so that's why Kinney County was situated where it's at. But, I'm glad that the county officials and myself, we stood up and we're like, not on our watch. This isn't going to happen. And I think we did everything we could, and we still are. The border numbers are lower, but do we have 100% operational control? No. But we're much closer than we've ever been, much closer than I've seen it in a long time. So I have to take off my hat to Border Patrol, and the new chief of Border Patrol, Mike Banks, has really turned it around and produced results that we've been needing for years. And so he's doing a great job.
What still needs to be done in Texas, though? Obviously, the federal government's come in, they've made some changes, but nothing that couldn't be undone by the next administration.
You're exactly right. Even folks in DHS have mentioned to me, like, Texas needs to take the certain steps now in order to prevent the next crisis, because it could come, heaven forbid the next Democrat ticket is AOC or something. In a blink of an eye, she's going to undo everything Trump did. There's no laws preventing her yet to do that. When that occurs, Texas is going to be the exact same situation we were in 2021. We need the tools in place now. Now is the time to put the tools in place, basically. I don't think you can get around it. We need a state agency that's tasked with border security, that being their mission, that they're trained and equipped to handle. When in 2021, when the border crisis began, in a pinch, we used DPS, National Guard, and that's what we did. And that's the only thing we could do at that late notice. But now we have time before the next crisis happens, and it will. We have to put everything in place that we can protect ourselves, because the federal government, we've seen, will not do it. They will abandon us once a new Democrat president goes into power. And the folks at DHS agree that, we're doing our job right now, but we can't promise anything in 3 years. Heaven forbid we have a Democrat in there. Here it comes again. And what tools do we have today? If the crisis happened tomorrow again for some reason, what new tools do we have that we had in 2021? We have no new tools. We have the same plan again. While I think we did the best that we could, it's important that you plan for the next time. You can improve and foresee what's going to happen again, and it will happen. What can we do to prepare for that time when it comes? And one thing that made this crisis, I believe, different than any other operation, because most border security operations have one thing in common: they all end. This time, this was a different type of crisis. The magnitude of people that come across, this is going to be something that Texas has to combat for years and generations to come. Border security is the issue that will not be going away anytime soon. It's incumbent upon us to realize that and take those steps to be effective in the future on preventing the same thing happening again. I don't want to see what I saw happen again. The amount of death, the destruction, and just, children being, smothered in trunks. Why go through that again if you can prevent it? And the one thing that's unique about border crime or border security, people that get killed by someone in the country illegally, that could have been prevented. Most crime, normal crime that occurs in a city, is not good, but there's some degree of it that will occur. Mm-hmm. With border security, people that cross the border legally who commit crimes, that's a crime that could have and should have been prevented the whole time. That person that just took that young lady's life shouldn't have been here to begin with. If we had border security, they wouldn't have been here to begin with. And I believe we're going to keep seeing that result over and over again. People are going to be dying from criminals that commit crimes that they shouldn't even have been here to commit, if that makes sense. It's a one type of crime that is 100% preventable with border security. So I don't see it as we having a choice, but to take the steps necessary to prevent that kind of thing.
I think Jocelyn Nungray and Riley Lakin, they both kind of hammered, both of their tragic stories kind of hammered that in for some part of the public.
Yeah, it's reality hitting, hitting you in the face. And you start to consider that that person should have never even been in the United States. If we had border security, those two young ladies wouldn't have ever been killed. And so that's why it's so important. And because that's why I think that's what distinguishes that from normal crimes that occurred. But every life that's lost is too much. And so I think Texas, I think we're too comfortable having a passive role in border security. Passive meaning we react to a crisis or we react to fix something. We need to take a more active role in preventing versus reacting. And I think it's easy to do. You just have to have people in the legislature that have the stomach to do it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a secure border. People act like it's a political topic that's bad to talk about, but when you're saving lives, innocent lives, how is that something that's bad? And so that's, I think too many people don't realize that, but I hope they do now.
So innocent lives on both sides of the equation. I remember the story of the little girl in the trunk that y'all found in Kinney County.
Yeah, she was drugged, and if we hadn't found her, she'd have been dead within the hour. And by the grace of God, we did find her. But how many other girls that we didn't find that did die? I think the total of this crisis that we went through is will never determine how many lives are lost. And I can just tell you on ranches alone, we find skeletons that are over a year old that we don't know what happened. I mean, if I had money to bet, I'd bet you it was an illegal alien that was on the ranch that succumbed to the elements, snake bite, something. But we're still finding bones of old bodies that no one even knew about. And I'm sure there's a lot more. So the toll that it's taken on our state and our nation is yet to be counted. We're still counting it. And until we fix it, because the border, border security or really national security is a two-prong. You have the border and then you have the homeland. Fixing the border is actually the easy part. Securing the border, preventing crossings is what I'm talking about. That's the easy part. Securing the homeland is really the difficult part. As you can see in, DC and Portland and Chicago, getting those criminals out of our country is the more difficult part. And so our border is very close to being secure, but the other part of the mission is securing the homeland. And that's going to be the even harder part to do. It's the most difficult aspect of this whole operation. And that's where I think the state of Texas needs to be more active in assisting DHS in doing that. Because if you look at the numbers, the DHS employees, they don't have the numbers to pull it off. They have to have state resources helping them. And that's where you get the 287Gs and all that good stuff. But, it's not, the federal government has been tasked with helping doing that, but it's by no means can the state just sit back and not help. We have to do everything in our power to help them, because at the end of the day, it's going to be our citizens that pay the price. So
I remember you and many other people on the border told me kind of when this all started that it's not staying here. It's coming to you. It's coming to everyone else in the country. And
right.
I feel like that's just been demonstrated.
Exactly.
A whole lot.
And in court, we have thousands of people that didn't show up for court, and there's a failure to appear warrants out for their arrest. And all those warrants are getting served on people all across the nation. We have to transport prisoners that are caught in New Hampshire, Chicago, any state you can think of. And there's some even in Cuba. There's warrants all over the nation that who came through Kinney County, who were arrested, didn't show up for court, a warrant's out for their arrest. They get pulled over a speeding ticket or whatever, and that warrant pops up. And they're all over the nation. They've spread everywhere. So everyone that came through Kinney County, they're everywhere now. And the got-away numbers, there's the known gotaways and there's the unknown gotaways, how many there are. And just by looking at camera pictures alone from surveillance that we have access to, the got-away numbers they're citing are very low. Those are people they actually see, they actually track. Just on my family's ranch alone, there's hundreds of them that went through that we don't even know who they were. And those aren't even counted in the got-away numbers. So I think you can double the amount of got-away numbers, and we're probably looking at something more realistic of what came in.
That's truly astonishing that we allowed everything to go on that went on for the past 4 years.
Right. And the places that I'm still finding backpacks and old campfires and places they camp. It's 60 miles from the border. It's in North Kinney County into Edwards County. And these people were evading law enforcement, willing to walk 60 miles to evade Border Patrol. And this is when Border Patrol was handing out free phones, free flights, and they still wanted to evade. That tells you there's something in their past or on their criminal history they did not want discovered. And so it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out you're in trouble. It's kind of like our nation right now. It's like we had a home burglary. We closed the door that was knocked in, but the burglars are still in the house. And so we now have to get the burglars out of our house. But that's where we're at on this. And like I said, that's a more difficult task. That's going to be more difficult than securing the border. And so I think the states, especially Texas, need to do their part, step it up, and help DHS accomplish this mission. Because at the end of the day, it's in our best interest to make sure everyone's accounted for that's supposed to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brent.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Real Texans. We'll see you next week.